it's time to add some color in. Again, a cringy attempt at an intro, but thanks for your patience. If you're anything like me, you've been going through these exercises, you've been learning how to use different functions and different processing commands. You're really grasping all of these different ideas of how we can combine them together to make up images, and you are incredibly frustrated that you cannot change the color of things. We're here to fix that problem. So, of course, there are ways that we can change the colors of shapes in processing. And the textbook for chapter 5, it's chapter 5, right? Yes, went through all of the different ways we can do that. And we're going to dive into a few examples here and talk about how colors are represented by the computer. So, most programming languages won't natively just have abstractions for things like pink and red, blue. We have to use specific kinds of color models to specify what color we actually want. Because when you think about it, pink can mean a whole bunch of different shades of pink depending on who you talk to. Same with red and blue and any number of color that you want to represent. We want to be able to give people the abilities to specify the exact color they want. You think about how important that would be to someone like a big business, where their branding has very specific shades in their coloring. WestJet's colors, like they have specific names associated with them that we use in all of our branding. And when our web developers go and code up a new website, we want to be able to ensure we can specify the exact shade of teal that we want displayed. And usually we're going to be doing that through something like an RGB specification or a hex code, different things like that. What we'll use in this course to specify colors is the RBG color model. So that's where we have 3 sets of numbers that specify the amount of red, green, and blue we would like to generate our final color. There's also a grayscale option, which would mean we just have one number, so anywhere from 0 to 255, and that would give us an idea of if it's like white, black, or some shade of gray in between. Okay, we'll get lots of practice using different colors, and I'm also going to show you a tool right away that will help you figure out what these different values mean. So for exercise 1, we have a whole bunch of numbers here that represent different colors. You'll see A here must be a grayscale color because it only has one value, and the rest of these must be some kind of RGB color. That if I look at those, I'm like, okay, so equal parts red, green, and blue. I don't know. Thankfully, there is a website that can help us out with all of that kind of stuff. So with the grayscale, it's a little bit more straightforward than with RGB. So you will have 0 being black and 255 being white. And then the shades in between are going to be different degrees of gray. So if we say 255, we know that's white. And you can either go back into the textbook and look at the figure under chapter 5.1. You could throw it into processing, use the fill command to make a circle with shade 255, and you'd see it would be white. For these other ones here, they're all using RGB values. Now, my favorite website for figuring out what RGB value I want is from W3 Schools. It's an RGB calculator. And so up here, you have the color that it is. You can type in your red, your green, and your blue to each of the different values, and it will adjust these different sliders down here and show you the output. It also gives you the hex code if you needed that for some programming later on, as well as the HSL value, but we won't use those 2 things in this class. You can also play around by just clicking on these sliders down here to mix up different colors. You can see you can really make any color you want. So if I wanted to know, say, what B was, all I need to do is go into here and type 125 for my red, 125 for my blue, and 125 for my green, and hit enter, and that ends up being this gray shade. one of the great things about this, and you'll see, you've heard me just say my red, my green, and my blue, is that the three values do represent what proportion of red we're having in our color, what proportion of green we're having in our color, and what proportion of blue we're having in our color. My sister's an artist. She could probably see those numbers and be like, oh yes, this makes perfect sense. I need W3 schools to help me. And so for C, again, we are going to have mostly red and green and no blue. So if you mix red and green, if you remember from elementary school what color that is, congratulations. I do not, so I'm going to put it into this, and there we go. It's yellow. Lovely. And then for D, here we can do another color, so 200 for red, 50 for green, and 150 for blue. And I hit enter, and that's like this fuchsia purpley color. So pretty cool. There's all sorts of different ones that you can go on through here if you want to look at color and color theory on W3 Schools. W3 Schools is a great resource for all things computer science. There's lots of good tutorials and things like that on there. Now, if we wanted to try to make these colors, how could we do that? So remember black? If we just go into grayscale, we know that black is 0. So what if we put an RGB 0 for every value? Would that give us black? And it does. So that's the absence of all colors in there would give us black. If we wanted to do a dark blue, so we're probably going to want mostly black for the other ones. And let's just kind of move up this blue a little bit. We don't want to max out the blue. It would give us way too much brightness. But if we go somewhere maybe around like blue 100-ish, that's a pretty nice dark blue. It looks like it matches up pretty well. Cyan is going to be some combination of colors, right? So if I do color theory better, I would know exactly what it is. I was thinking back to the figure in the textbook where it had the overlapping colors, and I know cyan is one of those, so it's a maximum of 2 colors, and in this case it's the maximum of the green and the blue. Finally, to get the orange, I know we're going to want a little bit of probably some blue in there, a little bit of some red and green to make some yellow. So let's see if I can click my way to a victorious orange. Probably not, if I'm being 100% honest. I'm probably going to need to actually use a color picker to figure out where my orange is. I have a yellow here. Let's click on this, use our color. Aha, if I wanted my orange, here it goes, all the way red, about halfway green, and a little bit of blue. So I was kind of close, just needed a little bit of tweaking there. So you can play around with W3 Schools if you want to see different colors. I'd also just recommend if there's a color you want for an assignment or whatever, you're making a design and processing, you can just Google RGB value for orange or whatever, and it will also pop those values up for you. We're going to do this exercise as a demo, and then the other options in the slides, I'll just go through them quickly now. So doing this ellipse with a dark gray background, the dark gray outline on the circle, and the yellow fill you'll do by yourself, and then you'll also do the traffic light ones by yourself as well. But we'll do this one here using our stroke and our fill command. So what we want to do is produce a rectangle that has a red outline and a white inside. So if I bring over processing again, whoopsie, give me a second, I just want to get rid of all my code I had from the last chapter. You can see I didn't get rid of it all. If we just ran this, you'll notice that the default background in the canvas is this light gray. So we don't need to specify the background color, but if we wanted to, we could. And remember, we do that using the background command, and then we would give it a value. If we want it to be gray, we can just use a grayscale value. And remember, we have those extremes of black and white being 0 and 255. So somewhere in between should be gray. And if I run this just to double check, yeah, it's a different shade of gray than it was, but it is a shade of gray. So I can tweak that if I want to, but I'm perfectly fine with how that is. We know our command for a rectangle is the rectangle command. and we get our 2 coordinates. So we'd have a coordinate up at the top for X and Y for our top left, or this portion right here, and then a coordinate down here for X and Y for our bottom right. So let's just, if I was being a diligent student, I would have written this out on a nice coordinate sheet, and I would know exactly which ones I wanted to plop in there. I'm just going to go haphazardly 10 by 50. This is probably a square, if I remember correctly. And let's just run that to make sure it's running correctly. Let's see. Oh, and I don't even see it. Did I do this correctly? This is why I always run my commands right after. So one thing I'm going to do just to make sure that I have, or I see everything that's in here, is I'm going to set the size. I'll set my size to be 300 by 300 for my canvas, just to make sure that's why I'm not seeing something, or that's not the reason why I'm not seeing something there. Okay, still not seeing anything. Oh, well, we should see a rectangle. What if I comment out this background and then rerun it? So remember, the background says, okay, computer, ignore it. Oh, no, it still doesn't see anything. Am I missing something from my rectangle command? Let's try. Let's try to remember. Go back, if you're in this position where you're like, nothing seems to be working, I tweaked a few things. Go back to the textbook. Remember what the rectangle command actually is. What does it expect as input? Maybe we've misremembered something, right? Maybe we are like, oh, we thought for sure that it was this X, Y, and yada, yada, yada. What if it isn't? So if we go back, it will be all the way to chapter 3. Does anyone know what I did wrong here? It's not yelling at me that I did something wrong. Rectangle command is actually RECT in processing. It's a very common mistake. It's okay to make those types of things. One giveaway for that was that when I had it like this, the word was all black. We know that if we're using a command from processing, it will highlight it in blue for us. And you'll see as soon as we get rid of the other words, we have it right there. So now if I run this, my square, beautiful. Let's try to make it a little bit more of a rectangle. We'll just change this to 80, see what it does. A beautiful rectangle. We can uncomment this other command, add our background back in if we want. Now we have a nice darker gray background. And the last thing it wants us to do is add that red outline. So if you remember from the textbook, the command that will add the outline for us is called the stroke command. As soon as you call stroke and give it a different color, any of the other drawing commands you use after will use that color you specified for any of the drawings. So if we want just red, we know that we just want to max out that red channel and then put no green or blue. And if I run that, we have a beautiful red outline on our rectangle. And just the warning that I wanted to give was, if we do then say after, make an ellipse at 150, 150, and give it a diameter of 50, and 50, this will also have a red outline. You'll see that here. If you wanted this to be a different color, you would need to use the stroke command again and tell the computer, okay, stupid computer, I changed my mind. I want a green outline now. And then you run it again, and now you get green. So you have to be very, very precise with telling the computer over and over again what the different colors you want are, and making sure that the commands that you would draw with those colors are right after when you use them. You could also, and you will be in the next one, using the fill command as well. And so that's going to fill the inside of the shapes that you're specifying. So let's fill this one all blue. Why not? Just let the chaos roll. And so you'll see here that when you do that, your stroke command will still do the outline. And then your fill will do whatever's inside. So you can make those match if you want. They can be different colors, whatever you need to solve the problem. So I'll let you try this yellow one with a darker gray outline, and then I'll let you try building out these traffic lights as well. All right? And have a good time doing that. If you do that quite easily, you want to challenge yourself, think of a different shape that you could draw or a different picture you could draw and draw it out. Maybe somebody could make me a SpongeBob and post it in the course discussion boards. I would love that. Or a French Bulldog. Both Rambo and Vader would love to be recreated in processing if you feel so inclined. But have fun and happy coding.